Welcome to the greatest podcast in sports betting entertainment. My name is Tanner Kern, certified G, bona fide stud, and you can't teach that. In this right here, this is G Money Grant Mitchell. We are here breaking down the wonderful slate of college football this weekend and a little Ravens versus Commanders talk. And you can't teach that. Bada boom, man of the people in the room. G Money Grant Mitchell, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Pretty good. It's the middle of the week. Well, actually, we're past the middle of the week now. Anytime we get football back on TV, that's always a good thing. Got some Thursday night football tonight. Excited for that. I see you're feeling festive as well. You got the New York Mets shirt on. Big win for the boys the other day.
Yeah, big win for the boys. I actually bet the Phillies to win the World Series, and then I bet the Dodgers to win the World Series. Neither of those are probably going to hit. Maybe the Dodgers if they get through. But I also have an exact NLCS matchup with Padres versus Mets. So I'm kind of in a good spot no matter what right now. I've just been throwing money at futures, trying to get out of all my futures, and I'm set up decently well to do that unless the Dodgers win and then they lose to the Mets in the NLCS.
You know that trend on Twitter where some world news will happen and someone will reply, explain in NFL terms, explain in NBA terms. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So I saw there was just a tweet that said breaking the Detroit Tigers, blah, 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 blah. And someone replied and said, explain this in NBA terms. And someone said, well, imagine that a team of 11 Joe Ingalls that got Luka Doncic once every 5 games, just won the conference championship. And that's not a terrible comparison. What is going on with the Tigers? How is this even possible?
I don't know. I mean, you got Tarek Skubal and you got a young team of dudes that are just playing really well. But Skubal's been the big reason they've been so successful. If they're in really good shape, if they can win, well, they're up 2-1 now. So even if they lose game 4, you still get Skubal in game 5 on Saturday, and they're going to be favored in that game. So it's not crazy to think the Tigers are going to the ALCS. It's kind of like the Diamondbacks of last year, going all the way to the World Series, not winning it, but they were a team that people overlooked, and they found their way into the Fall Classic.
Baseball, playoff baseball, I don't know if you'll agree with me on this. Playoff baseball to me is like March Madness because you want to have a good team, obviously, but it's about who gets there the hottest. And because it doesn't start as best of 7s, these are short series. And when you get to the NBA Finals, the best team always wins because it's a best of 7 series. It's basically impossible to get 4 upsets in a 7-game series, at least that far in the first round. You might get it. That far into the playoffs, you're not going to get it. With the playoffs, because the series is so short, the worst quote unquote team could win the first round. They win the second round and they can get to the World Series. And at that point, you're on fire, and it just comes down to who's playing better at that time.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. In baseball, you're going to get upsets all the time. In basketball, you're never going to get an upset. Even in football, like an upset, if you take the better team, I would say they're going to win the game 7 out of 10 times. And it's not 10 out of 10, but it's definitely not baseball where, the Padres are probably not as good as the Dodgers. I shouldn't say that. They have a more formidable team right now, but the Dodgers are one of the best teams in baseball historically, and they just haven't been able to get over the hump in the playoffs, and they've lost to inferior opponents. So that's baseball in a nutshell. It's been a good playoff so far. It's been fun to watch. It's been very exciting.
Yeah, so I'm going back and I'm looking at just the NFL playoff results from last year to think about this, upset, whatever, does the better team win? So we got the Buccaneers who beat the Eagles. At that time, the Eagles had lost 6-7. The Bucs were better. Lions beat the Rams. They were better. Packers beat the Cowboys. That was one upset. You go to the next round, the Lions beat the Bucs. That was expected. Niners beat the Packers. That's what you expected. And the Niners beat the Lions. That's what you expected. On the other side, Chiefs beat the Dolphins. Bills beat the Steelers. Texans beat the Browns. All of that is, that's the chalk. The Chiefs beat the Bills, and then the Ravens beat the Texans, and then the Chiefs beat the Ravens, and the Chiefs beat the Niners. There was only one real upset in that whole thing, and it was Packers beating the Cowboys.
Yeah, so for the most part, football, you're going to get it playing straight up. It's 70 to 80%, I bet, favorites are going to win the playoffs. Basketball, it's like 100% favorites are usually going to win the playoffs. And then baseball, it's like you never know what you're going to get.
Yeah, that's why the upsets you do get in the NBA playoffs, like when the Mavs beat the Heat in I think 2012, when Dirk beat LeBron and Wade, when the Cavs beat the Warriors in 2016, when the Pistons beat the Lakers in 2004, I want to say. That's why it's such a big deal, because you basically never see that happen.
No, never see it happen. And In baseball, we see it happen all the time, which can be frustrating too. But if I truly think if the Dodgers can get through this round and beat the Padres, I do think they have the best chance of winning the World Series because now you got some momentum. The Mets are a team kind of like the Diamondbacks, very good. Obviously, could go on a run, but their run does end because ultimately they're just not as talented as the team across the field from them.
Yeah, and this Dodgers Padres series, obviously these are rivals and they don't like each other. You're not gonna get that same level of hatred between the teams when you do play the Mets, and I think that favors the Dodgers more. Normally, when you get, I don't know what your take on this is, when two teams are playing and they truly dislike each other, and you've got that rivalry nature, it raises the underdog more than it raises the favorite. So I think that's
Yeah.
part of what's helping, along with how good the Padres were over the final couple months of the season.
Yeah, like if the Padres go into Dodger Stadium, score first, and then get all their antics going in that game 5 on Friday night, they're probably going to win the game. If the Dodgers come out and take care of business early, I think they'll get the job done. But when the Dodgers face the Mets, like you look at New York in this series against Philadelphia, it was a series of hatred. Like the Mets wanted to knock out the Phillies. It's a division opponent at home. I don't think they've ever clinched a series at home before, or at least in the recent era. They were saying on the broadcast yesterday. So it's probably going to be a little bit of a come down from where they were at in this series if they do get the Dodgers or the Padres, honestly.
Yeah, I think I would take whichever one does win that Dodgers Padres series. I think I would take them to move on to the World Series. But we got to see what happens in the AL as well, because I don't know who I would actually take to win it all yet.
Yeah, AL's trash. The champs coming out of the NL. The Yankees are trash.
They
Tigers are
should
trash.
they should. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. Like I'm with you. I think the Dodgers are still the best bet. The Dodgers have been the best bet every year for the last 5 or 6 years.
Oh yeah, and they got to come through at some point outside of the little Mickey Mouse COVID season that they had. So, anyways, Grant, it's football season right now. Before we talk about football, tell them why they should go listen and watch and consume WSN content.
Well, there's a whole bunch of stuff over at WSN.com. First and foremost, you want to make some more money in sports betting. You want to get more prizes, more opportunities. We've got all sorts of promo codes over there, so go get those redeemed. Also, Tanner, myself, and a whole bunch of other people on the team are putting out content all the time. That's not just the NFL, that's MLB, NHL, NBA, anything you want, you're going to find it over there. So WSN.com is your number one place to be if you are a avid sports bettor.
Definitely. And we got some NFL talk before we talk a little college football. Biggest college football day of the year coming up on Saturday, but we'll jump to Sunday first. Grant, you're a 6.5 point underdog. The commies, 6.5 points. It's a little disrespectful, isn't it?
Well, so this is I've been having this debate. I tried to guess the line before it came out. I had it in my head at 5.5. It was 6.5. So I think, pretty close. I'm not going to beat myself up for that. There's a lot going on here. These teams are not rivals necessarily, but anytime you play someone that's close to you geographically, it's a bit of a rivalry nature, right? Like the Mets and the Yankees technically are not rivals, but
Oh, they're rivals, Grant. Come on. They're
I mean,
rivals.
technically, they're not in the same division. So technically they're not, but they are. That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying here. Like, and yes, those teams play more obviously than the Ravens play the Commanders, but these are the two teams that are closest to one another. If you look at the surrounding areas, who's the next closest team? The Panthers, the Eagles. That's too far. So you've got the whole situation going on. The battle for the Beltway is what they call it. Obviously, the two quarterbacks, they might not play like each other exactly in terms of the offenses they run, but their skill sets are pretty similar. They're both very exciting. This, in my opinion, is the game of the week, and it's at 1 o'clock, which you don't see a whole lot, but I'm just excited to watch it. I think 6.5 point spread is probably about right. I don't know. I would expect the Ravens to win this one, but who knows with what Washington has shown recently.
Yeah, I mean the slate overall isn't that entertaining, so I would say this is definitely a game of the week because people have interest in Jayden Daniels. At 4:30 you got the Lions and the Cowboys. That'll be fun, but like Detroit should easily take care of business. And Sunday Night Football you got Bengals Giants, so that's not the most entertaining slate, but this one's gonna be fun. I think Jayden Daniels is going to come out, go over his passing yards total of 224.5. I think Lamar is going to go over his at 221.5, I believe. I wouldn't pick a side in this game. It's very hard to do that for me just because this is like the epitome of a backdoor cover for the Commanders. I think Washington could come in, score late because of how bad the Ravens have been in the secondary and find a way to get within 6.5 points and not win the game outright. I think Jayden Daniels is going to show up and ball out. I just don't have confidence that they go out and actually win the football game.
Yeah, I've gone back and forth. I could see this being a 21-point win for the Ravens. Like Washington, you're riding high right now. You got a rookie quarterback. This is your welcome to the NFL moment. You know what I mean? Lamar Jackson is playing some of the best football of his career, and this is a guy who's already won 2 MVPs. So that's really saying something. On the flip side, Washington, the goalposts are being moved, which is crazy because we've been such a bad team for so long that people are now actually moving the goalposts, which is a sign of respect almost. But the first win, it was, well, you didn't score a touchdown against the Giants. And then, you go on the road and you beat the Bengals. That's amazing. Oh, but it turns out the Bengals are 1-4, so they're probably not that good. And then it's the Arizona Cardinals, but the Cardinals defense isn't that good. And then it's the Cleveland Browns, who do have a great defense, but their offense can't move the ball, so you were never under pressure. This is, if they win this game, there are no more questions to be asked. I mean, you could say they're not ready to win the Super Bowl, and everybody would agree with you, but they would have beaten a very good team that would have won 5 games in a row. And it doesn't matter if you're playing the Panthers, the Raiders, the Titans, and the Jaguars. If you beat 5 NFL teams in a row, your team is on to something.
Yeah, definitely. And they haven't had that marquee win yet. I think if you call a marquee win, it would be the Bengals because Jayden Daniels had to continuously come through and convert on 4th down and score and all that stuff. But this is the game that you're facing a really good run game between Lamar and Derrick Henry. Lamar can throw the ball down the field. And the Ravens, they haven't been great on defense. Like there's going to be opportunities for Jayden Daniels to score in this game. But this is still that marquee win that you're taking down a Super Bowl, a legitimate Super Bowl contender right now. I don't think it's going to happen. I can see the Ravens winning by 21. I can see the Ravens winning by 6 or 3. I can't see the Commanders winning this football game, but you never know.
I don't see them. I'm not going to say it would be impossible. I would give it probably 15 to 20% chance, but I'm definitely heavily expecting the Ravens to win this one. To jump into some of the numbers, the Ravens give up the fewest rushing yards in the league. That defense, as far as stopping the run, has been really good. They give up the 2nd most passing yards per game. Now, what Washington has done a lot of is they've protected Jayden Daniels, and I'm not saying that to diminish what he's done because he's made some high-level throws. A lot of the stuff you see him pushing the ball down the field, some of those are the best throws that you'll see all season, but there is a lot of short stuff as well, and they do run the ball a lot. Baltimore's number 1 in the league as far as rushing yards. Washington's number 2. They are right there. So if Baltimore comes out and Washington can't run the ball, the only person who's able to is Jayden Daniels, then this is going to be a real test for him because we know this Baltimore secondary is there for the taking. Again, pretty much every quarterback they've faced has been able to dissect them, but how is he going to be able to do? Because Baltimore, they're going to go cover 0. They're going to mix in their disguises. They're going to pull people down and then drop them out before the snap. They're going to mess with his head. So it's a big game for him just to see how mature and how developed he actually is at this stage of his career.
Now, looking at the MVP, we got 2 guys here that are in the mix between Jayden Daniels and Lamar Jackson. If
Derrick Henry as well.
No, he's not. He's not. Come on.
I mean, I've heard, I think Stephen A. Smith said that he thinks Derrick Henry's the MVP. Mike Greenberg said he thinks Derrick Henry's the MVP.
Well, they need stuff to talk about.
It's out there. It's a take that is out there.
Well, yeah. I mean, Christian McCaffrey winning the MVP was a take that was out there too. And you look at if you look at the odds right now, Caleb Williams is ahead of Derrick Henry. Derek Carr is ahead of Derrick Henry. That's all you need to say, Grant. Come on. It's a quarterback award. I agree with you. I'm not saying it's crazy. Like I think a running back should be in line to win the MVP, but this has just become the best quarterback award.
Well, I think first of all, if we're ranking MVPs for running backs, I think Saquon Barkley's number 1. I'd probably put Derrick Henry number 2. Now, Derrick Henry has had a huge impact on this offense, and it's why I was wrong about Derrick Henry and, funny enough, Saquon Barkley. Going into the year, I had said, well, Baltimore and Philly, they can run the ball. Why would I expect a big improvement because you signed a running back? I was wrong. I'll put my hands up. Derrick Henry's averaging a career high in rushing yards per carry. He's at 6. And Lamar Jackson is also at a career high. He's at 8 yards per carry. I don't think that's a coincidence because not only are they 2 elite runners, but they are completely different. You can put Derrick Henry in the eye, get blockers in front of him, and he's just pounding the rock up the middle, whereas Lamar's, quick, elusive, hitting the sides. And if you're a defense, technically those are both runs, But just from your time playing football, defending Derrick Henry up the middle and defending Lamar Jackson on the outside, it's completely different. It's completely different coverages and schemes that you have to be prepared for. So this team, I mean, they are clicking on all cylinders. I think Derrick Henry, as good as Lamar has played, I think Derrick Henry does have a lot of influence in allowing him to play at that level.
He does, but the Ravens could sign another running back and win football games. They need Lamar more than Derrick Henry. That's what I will say. Like so like last year when we were having this debate about like Brock Purdy versus Christian McCaffrey, and Purdy was ahead of him in the MVP race. It's like, you're like, he's not the MVP on his team. Well, Derrick Henry is not the MVP on the Ravens. It's still Lamar Jackson. So I can't when I'm seeing like Derek Carr ahead of him, Grant, I can't talk about Derrick Henry being the MVP right now. I agree with you. Running back should be in the mix, but it's just not that kind of award.
No, I would still give it to Lamar. Don't get me wrong. I'm trying to make the case that Derrick Henry is probably, the odds say he doesn't have a shot. In my mind, he's probably in the top 10, maybe top 7 for the award in my list that I'm making. I'm saying the odds are disrespectful to the contributions he's made. Lamar is still the MVP of this team. A lot of people were talking about how great Joe Burrow was last week, and he was great. Joe Burrow's been great for a month. But are we forgetting Lamar Jackson in that game had 350 passing yards, not total yards, passing yards, 4 touchdowns? This is a guy that's playing, again, arguably at the highest level of his whole career, and he's already won 2 MVPs. With Derrick Henry in the backfield now, that is what's so scary for the rest of the league.
If the Bengals were 4-1, Joe Burrow would be the favorite right now.
Where is he in odds?
He's 22 to 1. So he's like 10th.
I guess that makes sense. It's probably a team record thing more than anything.
Yeah.
Even if they were, honestly, if they were 2-3, because right now at 1-4, I think most people are writing them off from the playoffs. They're not completely out of it. When I looked yesterday, they were minus 175 to miss the playoffs. I think plus 140, plus 150 to get in. So it's still reasonable. But if they were 2-3, those odds would probably be right about, minus 110 each side. And his MVP odds are probably a lot better.
He's probably be first. He's 6th in passing yards, 12th or first in passing touchdowns. He's only thrown 2 picks, and he's got the second best QBR in the league right now. So this is a record thing, because when you look at Mahomes has been trash. Like the fact that he's plus 230 right now, that's embarrassing.
I'm all for honoring the best player. Mahomes has not been a top. I don't think he's been one of the 15 best quarterbacks in the league this year.
No, you should have Baker higher up than 40 to 1 too right now, because
Baker should be ahead of Mahomes
for sure. Baker should be, in all honesty, like Baker should be. I'd put Baker ahead of Jayden Daniels right now. Graham, sorry.
I wouldn't. I would probably put him right behind him.
Right there.
Baker has a lot more. Well, Washington has performed, okay? And Cliff Kingsbury's done a great job. Dan Quinn's done a great job. The running game, all those players have done a great job. Coming into the year, nobody expected that. We were talking about Olamide Zaccheaus and De'Ami Brown are the number 2 receiver. Austin Eckler is washed. Bobby Wagner's 50 years old. Nobody wanted Cliff Kingsbury. Nobody wanted Dan Quinn. You got him off the scrap heap. So if we remember those expectations and we look at how this team has performed, this is where the V in MVP comes into play. Jayden Daniels is one of the most valuable players in the league. He has not been better than Lamar Jackson. He has not been better than CJ Stroud, but I think he has been more valuable to his team than those 2 players.
I think you can make Baker's been just as valuable to the Bucs as he's been to the Commanders. No doubt.
He's got Mike Evans. He's got a lot of Super Bowl winners still there. Todd Bowles is a great coach, right? Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, a good offensive line. You got Vita Vea. You got all these guys on defense. Antoine Winfield Jr. Those are players over there to help him. The overall team there is a lot better than what's in Washington. Plus, you can't discount that Jayden is a rookie. His impact, it's tangible. Baker is playing well, but we knew Baker, we expected Baker to play well because they got to the playoffs and won a playoff game last year. Jayden, look at all the other rookie quarterbacks. Half of them couldn't even get on the field. Caleb Williams was awful to start the year. Bo Nix was awful. I think that's where the biggest difference is.
Baker also smacked Jayden Daniels, Grant.
He did. It was his first game of the year. I'm not trying to disrespect Baker. If I'm making a top 5 right now, just out of thin air, I'm not going to put them in order, but I would have CJ Stroud, Baker Mayfield, Jayden Daniels, Lamar Jackson, and
Josh Allen.
Josh Allen.
Probably.
He would be fifth. He's fallen.
Yeah.
He's fallen because of the last 2 weeks.
Darnold shouldn't be up there. Darnold has not been that good when you look at it. He's just leading. It's like Darnold's comeback player of the year. These odds are so messed up right now. Joe Burrow should be higher. Dak should be lower. Jared Goff should probably be lower the way he's playing. He had one good game, one really good game.
I'm with you. I don't disagree.
Yeah. So the MVPs got some good value right now if you can jump in at the right time, for sure.
If the Commanders win this game, this is the final thing I'll say. Commanders win this game and Jayden Daniels plays well, he might be the MVP favorite, or he might be second right behind Mahomes. But we both agree Mahomes does not deserve to be the favorite.
No, Mahomes shouldn't be in the top 20 right now.
It'd be crazy. 10. I mean, we've had one MVP in NFL history, and it was the first year they ever gave the award. It was Jim Brown in 57.
It's not going to be Jayden Daniels, Grant. I'm sorry.
It probably won't be. It shouldn't be.
No, it's going to be Lamar, Stroud, or Josh Allen, or Jared Goff. Those would be my four right now.
I would be leaning Lamar or Stroud out of those.
Yeah, and Baker, I would put Baker. If Baker was on, if the Bucs weren't so looked down upon in the NFL, because they still are, no matter how much talent they have, Baker would be right up there too.
Yeah, he would be.
All right, college football time. Big slate, Grant.
Where do you want to start? We got a lot of games.
I think we run through them in order. So 3 big games on Saturday. Texas, Oklahoma starts with that game. 3:30 kickoff. The Cotton Bowl, Texas Fairgrounds, Dallas, big game. The Longhorns will smack the Sooners. It will not be a game by halftime.
So I'm surprised you have that take, and I'm a little disappointed because I also have that take. The spread, I believe it was 14.5. I'm pulling it up right now to see if it's moved. Nope, it's still 14.5. I'm not just picking, I'm going to be betting Texas minus 14.5. Texas and Ohio State, as far as the most overall well-rounded teams in the country, it's not even close. It's those two. Oklahoma, it's the Red River rivalry. They won this game last year. Granted, they had Dylan Gabriel for that game. You expect, it's like the Iron Bowl. You always got to think about the spread and then shrink it a little bit because it's a rivalry. They play up to the competition. Oklahoma's offense is horrific. And yes, they have a very good defense, but this Texas team, I mean, they can dominate you at the offensive line. They've got guys out wide. Quinn Ewers is going to be back for this game. And they're probably not going to let Oklahoma score more than 13 or 14 points in this game. So they just got to get to 28 to cover. I like Texas.
Now, I will say, Grant, if you turn this game on into third quarter and you get the ESPN alert, OU's tied with Texas, I also wouldn't be surprised too. Because when you look at Texas, Quinn Ewers is coming off an injury. So he's playing his first start coming off the injury. They beat Colorado State, trash. Michigan, trash. Texas San Antonio, trash. Louisiana Monroe, trash. Mississippi State, trash. Now, they have dominated those teams, but they have not played anybody. You look at Oklahoma's schedule, 25-15 loss to Tennessee, tougher game. They also beat Auburn 27-21. So they played a slightly tougher schedule. This will be the first test of the season for Texas.
I'm with you on that. I will say Michigan, they're trash compared to where they were last year. Michigan's still a reputable team. They're playing at home, second week of the season, had a lot of confidence. And Michigan, despite not having the quarterback play, not being a great team, they're still highly physical, especially on the defensive front. And Texas went up there. They beat them down at the point of attack. Michigan's got 2 first-round picks right in the middle of that defensive line, and Texas completely overwhelmed them. So it might not have been as impressive as beating the national champions last year, but it still said something to me. And you're right. I also wouldn't be surprised if somehow or another this is tied late in the game. But I think the more likely alternative is Oklahoma literally just can't move the ball, and Texas ends up blowing them out.
I agree. I think that's the more likely alternative. But Davis Warren started like 2 games, and then he got benched because he's not good. So
and then they went to Alex Orji, and then they benched him as well.
He's worse. And then the kid who played last week against would they play in Washington single-handedly gave them the football game. So Michigan's terrible, Grant. Let's be real. Terrible in they'll be playing in a New Year's Bowl. That's all I'll say. It's not going to be a meaningful one though.
They're terrible relative to where they were a year ago.
Yeah, and they're a classic Big Ten team. Like Penn State would get smacked around by the majority of teams in the SEC. I don't think Penn State's the best team in the world just because they're going to lose one game in the Big Ten this year.
Well, there's a chance Texas. So if Ohio State, I actually heard this on Joel Klatt put this out there.
So,
You saw this where he said Ohio State could be number 1 and Penn State could be number 2 when they play.
Yeah, probably not going to happen, but it's very possible.
It is possible. And I have more confidence in Penn State this year than I do in years past, just because they're finally explosive. When I don't know if they still are, but last week they were top 10 in the country in yards per play. They can throw it and they can run it. You haven't been able to say that about Penn State in the past. So I have more confidence in them this year, but I still don't think I would be taking them to do anything crazy at the end of the year.
Yeah, they've just struggled to win that big game. That would be my one fear. Got another game, Grant, here. Ohio State, Oregon, 7:30, NBC. 2 versus 3. Ohio State has looked good this season. Beat Iowa, Michigan State, Marshall, Western Michigan, and Akron. Still not the toughest test in the world. Oregon, same thing. The common opponent here is Michigan State. When you look at the common opponent, Michigan State, Oregon beat them 31-10. For Ohio State, they beat them 38-7. Oregon's a 3-point dog at home here. It's a tough one to play. How you see this one coming out?
Yeah, so I'm actually on FanDuel and I see Ohio State at -3.5. I think it's DraftKings where they're only -3. So as always, do your line shopping and go to WSN.com because it'll help you do that. But I like Ohio State to win this game at that 3.5 price point. I don't know if I would bet it. You'd certainly be better off with 3, especially 2.5. If you can get it 2.5, then I would definitely go with it. Ohio State, in my opinion, is the most well-rounded team in the country. I know I put Texas in that bucket, but I would say it is Ohio State. What's so big for me is Oregon has a very good run defense. They're only 44th in the country, but they give up less than 4 yards per carry. I think it's like 3.7, 3.8 yards per carry. When they played Boise State earlier this year, now, a lot of the improvements you've seen from Oregon have been because the offense has gotten better, particularly the offensive line. So I know this was when they were quote unquote struggling, but their defense really has not changed. When they played Boise State, they let Ashton Jeanty, who is the Heisman favorite, run the ball 25 times for 192 yards. That's 7.7 yards per carry and 3 touchdowns. And that was actually Jeanty's worst game of the year, which is crazy. So you can say that the defense did its job. But Ohio State's rushing attack is unreal because you look at Quinshon Judkins and you look at Travion Henderson, they're averaging 160 rushing yards between the two of them, 7.7 yards per carry, and Chip Kelly is going to run the ball. And this is one of Ohio State's best offensive lines in years. So I think they're going to be able to dominate the ground just like you saw Boise State and Jeanty do. And if they can do that, what's the easiest way to go on the road and take the crowd out of it? You play defense and you run the ball. Well, guess what? Ohio State also gives up the fewest points per game in the entire country. So I think this is still going to be competitive, but I do think Ohio State is going to get the better of them.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a competitive game. I think overall, though, like when we look at that physicality between the Pac-12 and the Big Ten, this is just a much more physical team, and we're going to see that play out throughout this game. Jeanty's unbelievable. He's fantastic. He's going to run over most of the competition that he faces when his rushing line set at 185 yards every single week and 1 touchdown's like -4,000 or whatever. Obviously, he's going to do some damage there, but I think Ohio State comes in and wins this game on the road. And also, they've probably been in Oregon all week. They've probably been practicing out here since Monday. These kids don't go to school, so they're going to be acclimated to the weather.
And also Ohio State, again, the defense, fewest points per game. They've got the highest average margin of victory, and they're not one-dimensional in any sense. They can stop the run. They can stop the pass. They've got a good offensive line. Again, they are awesome running the ball. But Will Howard is an experienced senior transfer quarterback. I think he had, it was like 4 touchdowns or something in his last game. I don't know. I could be getting that wrong, but he's played very well as well. And we know they've got Jeremiah Smith. They've got Egbuka out wide. Those are tough guys to cover. You just have so many people you have to honor all over the field that Oregon just with Dylan Gabriel, the 2 head-scratching interceptions last week. Oregon is also 110th in the country in takeaways. You can't let Ohio State walk over you if you're not going to steal possessions, and they haven't done that. The biggest question mark, again, is Dylan Gabriel. What's going on with him recently? I think you got to give this one to Ohio State.
Yeah, I agree there. And the big one here SEC game. If Ole Miss loses this game, they are likely eliminated from the college football playoff. They're facing LSU going into Death Valley on Saturday night. They are a 3.5-point road favorite. I do think Ole Miss finds a way to win this game. I think they're better all around the board. LSU's defense is a concern. It's always been a concern. But Nussmeier's been fantastic for them. 15 touchdowns, just 4 picks. Same thing with Jackson Dart, 13 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. If I'm looking at my favorite bet in this game, it's probably the over of 61.5, just because we're going to get 2 high-powered offenses that love to throw the football. But I do think Ole Miss wins the game and keeps their playoff hopes alive, and this will eliminate LSU from the playoffs as well.
I'm with you. LSU really they've not been great. I mean, they lost to USC, and yeah, that game was somewhat close. Both teams made plays. It was also the first game of the year, so you never want to look into that too much. Since then, they beat Nichols. Okay. They beat South Carolina by 3 points. I guess they beat UCLA and South Alabama pretty convincingly, but those aren't great wins on your resume. Ole Miss, they lost to Kentucky. It was unexpected. Kentucky is 6th in the country in defensive EPA as far as EPA per play. It is an elite defense. They almost beat Georgia. You can't forget that. So while the loss was unexpected, you can at least give them a little bit there just because of how good Kentucky's defense has been. Ole Miss has the better offense, in my opinion, even though LSU does have a good offense. And it's not close. Ole Miss has the better defense. That's an area that LSU has struggled in for years. They have not fixed it. They consistently disappoint. So I'm with you. I think the over is the more likely of the 2 bets, but I would probably lay the points with Ole Miss as well.
Yeah, they get the job done. Grant, what game out of these 3 are you most excited to watch?
Ohio State, Oregon, no question. Ohio State is the national title favorites. If you look at the futures odds, this is only going to solidify that for them. Oregon also, because of some of the, Georgia lost to Bama and Bama lost to Vandy. Because of those losses, Oregon had fallen way down. They also shot back up, I believe, to 4th in those odds. So this is going to have huge implications on not only futures odds, but Big Ten regular season and postseason championship. Who's going to get a first-round bye in the college football playoff? This is the game that matters the most as far as the possible range of outcomes it could have.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to this. It's going to be a good day of college football. Sorry to anyone who has a wedding on Saturday. I know this is like the biggest wedding day of the year, I think.
Yeah, it is. And then we've got, is it Texas and Georgia next weekend?
I don't know.
It is. It is Texas, Georgia next weekend.
Wow, that'll be fun too. So that's the game everyone's going to want to watch, and that's in Texas.
Yes, that is in Texas.
And we also have Alabama, Tennessee, and realistically, if Alabama loses that game or Tennessee loses that game, you're really sweating out your college football playoff hopes there. Especially, I think last year too, with all the SEC bias that was involved in the college football playoff. Now, granted, Florida State was not a team that should have gotten in last year. They would have gotten absolutely smoked. But I think there might be a little bit of love for these other conferences this year and some steps away from the SEC.
Well, if the SEC in particular continues to cannibalize itself, the Big 12 beats up on itself, and the ACC doesn't look, what if we get to the end of the year and it's Clemson loses again, Miami loses again, and they play in the ACC championship? Whoever gets that group of 5 bid, whether it's probably not going to be UNLV now, but if it's Boise State or someone else, they could get a first round bye in the playoff. We could have a P4 champion actually be the 5 seed.
It could be Army or Navy right now too.
It's possible. I mean, yeah. I'm just excited. I know a lot of people have been bagging on this whole 12-team playoff. I'm excited for it because I like Georgia. I think Georgia's kind of, I guess if they beat Texas and they win out, then they could get a first-round bye. In my mind, they're not getting a first-round bye in the playoff, which means you've got a team that won 2 of the last 3 national championships hosting a playoff game at its campus. That doesn't sound exciting. I love that.
Yeah, no, I think 12 teams the way to go. It's also really exciting too because, like Alabama, who everyone thought was a shoe-in now, is not on the brink of elimination. But if you're looking at 2 lost SEC teams and you got a team that's lost to 2 top 25 schools, and then you got Alabama who lost to maybe Tennessee and Vanderbilt, but they beat Georgia, like where does that rank? Because you lost to Vanderbilt, which is probably one of the biggest upsets in college football history. So it's hard to quantify who's going to get in, who's not going to get in. But Grant, you know who could get in?
Who's that?
Connecticut Huskies.
What's the record?
4-2 heading into the break, bye week.
If they go
One more.
10-2, they're not getting in.
But they're going to go over their win total of 4.5 wins.
Yeah, that was one of your favorite bets. You said it all summer long, so
I know.
I gotta give you credit there.
I mean, they could lose all the way, lose the next 5 games, and then they still got a date with UMass on Thanksgiving weekend to go over
everybody's favorite bowl,
the Cum Bowl.
Yes.
All right, Grant, take us out here.
Guys, that's going to do it for this episode of Ride the Line. Tara and I appreciate you all joining us as always. Before you click off of the video, make sure you hit the like button, hit that subscribe button as well so that you never miss out on the videos we post. We will catch you all in the next episode of Ride the Line.